Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome back to our Working Together series live with Rabbi Carmi Ingber. We're just waiting on the rabbi to show up in the Zoom room. Our friend Rod Bryant down there in Houston, Texas, had to step out of the Zoom meeting for a second, but he should be right back. Also, I wanted to catch up with him and see what's going on new with NETIV. Yeah, exciting. Yeah, we haven't done this session in over about a month, but just scheduling conflicts. The rabbi was traveling from Israel back to the States, and I made plans the one weekend, and then Rod and his group had another rabbi attending, I think, last week, and things just coordinate. Doesn't always come together perfectly, but it is what it is. We're always excited when Rabbi Ingber is willing to share. I like how he gets spicy politically and always likes to talk about current events. So I look forward to hearing what he's got to share about today. In the past, we were talking a lot. He was sharing some good points from his book, Where the Heavens Kiss the Earth, subtitles Mystical Insights for Personal Growth by Rabbi Carmi Ingber. You can find that on Amazon. Excellent work. I've enjoyed his talks for sure. He's got a unique way of looking at things and a lifetime of experience in his synagogue. Wonderful rabbi for sure, and we do appreciate him. So we look forward to hearing from him today. So till he's in, I'll let you know, and hang in there, and he should be along shortly. Oh, I see the rabbi is just entering the Zoom room. He likes me to shut off my camera so he doesn't see himself speaking. So I got to make sure it's set up for the way he wants it set up. Rabbi Ingber, so good to be with you after several weeks. I missed you, and I look forward to hearing what you have to share. And yeah, you just give you a second to set up. There you go, all nice and set up. So yeah, I'm going to turn the class over to you, Rabbi.
Okay, how's everyone doing? Good to see you all. All right, it's been a long time. You had a long hiatus, and the world has, it's still here, thank God. And it's always
But
getting better.
Our prime minister's resigning, though, Rabbi.
Another good sign, which really is amazing, because the truth is that what happens is, and I explained this to you before, on a Kabbalistic level, what happens is the world is always getting better and closer to being fixed. That's happening. But there's two dimensions. One is called the internal, and one's called the external. The internal one, the spiritual one, you don't always see, but it's builds over time. And as the internal one is getting better and closer to completion, the external one is actually looking worse and worse. So that's why you don't always see that the world is actually coming closer to its perfection, because the externality looks worse. And the simple explanation for that is if you imagine, I mean, let's talk about your prime minister, for example. So what happens is that when you start to pull up the curtain and you see the emperor is not wearing any clothing, which has happened in America, it's happening in Canada, and it's going to happen in a much deeper level, because even those that we think right now are the purveyors of truth, they're not. They're just better than the last bunch. So what happens is that when that happens, the negative, the people that are procuring this whole illusion, they scream louder. They try to push their agenda more. It's like, it's happening in America, unfortunately, and this is a terrible tragedy. The fires in California. So what happens? So it's obviously, if you think about it, in terms of looking for responsibility of people, it's obvious that they have been negligent. It's obvious. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, saving for the smelt fish and then cutting the fire department's budget and then the DEI and the whole thing. So, what do they start screaming now? Oh, why are you blaming us? Don't blame us now. That's arguments. So it becomes a detour and becomes an illusion that people get stuck in more of the screaming of the externalities when they start to get exposed. So that's the good news. The good news is the world is getting better, and no, though you don't think it is, we're a lot closer than we were even just yesterday. So that's the good news. It doesn't mean it's simple. Doesn't mean it's simple. What's still going on in Israel is still going on, and that's and the purveyors of illusion are still selling their product. So we have to see through that. So what I wanted to do today is I really wanted to open it up to some, because there's so much to talk about. I wanted to open it up a little bit to some questions that people might have. About whatever it is, about spirituality, about how the world works, how the world looks, what's going on in the world today. I'm gonna open it up, and then if we have some questions for discussion, we'll take that. And if not, then I'll just keep talking. So let's open
Rabbi
it up.
Dan here.
Dan, what do you got?
Rabbi, I wonder if you have any insights. I think on the 25th of this month, there's supposed to be a complete planetary alignment. Is there any rabbinical thoughts on things of that nature at all? Not that people trust.
Which planets are lining up with what?
From what I understand, it's all of them. Yeah.
And what? Yeah. And where is the moon in this discussion?
I have no clue off the top of my head. I'd have to do some. Let me see if I can pull up some detail. January.
Let me give you some basics in the meantime while you get the story straight in terms of what's going on. So very, very important. This is very important because if you look throughout the Torah and coming up to the portions we're coming up to right now, which is the story of Egypt, the exile in Egypt. So in Egypt, these people were the masters of the occult. And they were masters at reading the astrological signs. And we see all of these things. Even if you look at the basic storyline, I mean, they started throwing the Jews into the water because their stargazers saw that the Jewish Redeemer was going to have some kind of a negative experience with water, not knowing that Moses was going to hit the rock to bring out water, and they want to destroy the world they want to kill the Jews through water. So even the process of what's happening in Egypt, and even what they saw, because if you look in the text, they used to kill all the Jewish babies. And then there was one day where they killed the Jewish babies that were born and the Egyptian ones. And their stargazers, the reason for that is their stargazers looked and they said, we see today is the day that the Jewish Redeemer is born, but we can't tell if he's Egyptian or he's Jewish. We don't know why. We can't tell. And the reason why they couldn't tell is because Moshe was Jewish and he was raised in Pharaoh's house, which, if you think about it, is in itself mind-boggling. The fact that God shows Pharaoh, you think you're in charge? You think you're going to do what you're going to do to fight me? In the end, you're raising the Redeemer. You're teaching him how to go and to because he did. Pharaoh made Moshe, he made him, put him in charge. And that's the famous story in this coming week's parsha, that Moshe goes out, and he's now been appointed as a leader in Egypt by Pharaoh. And then he sees the Egyptian beating the Jew, and he sees what's going on, and he's not going to tolerate this injustice, and he kills the Egyptian. And that's the beginning of the turning point. But Pharaoh ends up raising Moshe unwittingly. So the stargazers saw that they knew. So how'd they know? If this whole thing is illusion and nonsense, then what does it mean? Now, the answer is on a few levels. You understand. First of all, the stargazers, even the ones, by the way, anyone who wants to show me their face would love to see it. Those who don't, no problem, but always nice to see smiling faces. It helps to speak to human beings. I know you're there. No pressure. Naomi, good to see you. Jacob, good to see you. I got your question. Maybe you'll ask it here on the discussion. Jake asked a question from the Torah portion. So what happens is that so on one hand, the stargazers, you have to understand a few things. They see certain things, but they never have it right. They see certain aspects, but they don't have the whole story. And that's largely because, not just because of their inability to read it, but it's largely because human free will is something that they can't measure. So even if they see something, okay, but it can go this way, it can go that way. God gives us the free will in the world to affect things and to change reality. So they're seeing a process. They're seeing something. They're seeing Moses. They're seeing a redeemer, but they don't know what it is. And because they're trying to use these things to fight God, you can't fight God. It's absurd. Now, but what are the stars? What are these things? Because this is where you have the reality. And I've told you this before. It's an amazing, amazing thing. In the third generation of humanity, there already was the beginning of idolatry. That's wild. That means Adam, his son Seth, and then by the next son Enosh, by the third generation, people already started to commit idolatry. Now, how could they do that? They still had, Adam was alive. He was a prophet. I mean, how could this possibly be? So Maimonides explains that what happened was the original idea of idolaters was not idolatry of the stupid people that came later. It was like this. Now, God created the sun and moon, and he created them to have an effect on us. So if the king would send his messenger to you, wouldn't you show honor to the messenger of the king? The sun and moon are messengers of the king. So we have to acknowledge that. This is a very, very, very deep. I want you to understand this, because this is the idolatry of the East, as opposed to the idolatry of the West. The West and the East have two different problems. The West have divorced themselves from God. Yeah, God, just you do your thing, we'll do ours. Just we'll pay our dues. We'll go make a prayer and this and that and say this, say that, and then just leave us alone. So they don't see God in everything. The Western world, so the Eastern world, they took this idea of that God has his emissaries and God is imbuing his reality into everything, and therefore they start saying, well, therefore everything is God, and that really is the Eastern idolatry. And both things are it's a very, very deep point. I'm going to get into it now, but it's a very, very deep thing not to make this mistake. Where yes, God has created a reality that we have to know there are holy places and not holy places. At the same time, we have to know that somehow, some way, there is no. The reality is God is all there is. So how does the mind work? We can't totally understand that. But this was really the beginning of the idolaters. They started to see the physical things in the world, and they started giving it honor and seeing godliness in it. And then at a certain point, they said, oh, let's just worship that. Okay? Now, therefore, idolatry goes and gives the stars and the constellations, it gives it its own power, as if they are causing something. That's where the split between understanding that the stars, the moon, the sun, the planets, they are systems by which God directs his world, but they have no power. That's where it becomes idolatrous. And therefore, if a person says, oh, I can't go out today because the moon says this, the star says that, that's already called nichush. That's already called divinating, which all aspects of that is forbidden for Jews, and many of them are forbidden for the Noahides also. So that is where the mistake is. But what is the truth? The truth is like this: we don't understand how complicated the universe is. We know that there are billions of stars and billions of galaxies, and we think, what's the purpose of these things? But we don't understand, because when you look in your telescope and you could see a galaxy with 1 billion stars in it, if you go into an atom, you go into your cell and you start putting a microscope and start seeing the subatomic particles in your cell, you see the infinite design, the complicated levels go on the grand level and on the micro level. And what happens is God created a universe, and the purpose of the universe is, the pinnacle of creation is human beings. It's hard to imagine that, but it is, because we are the only ones that have free will to do good or not do good. And therefore, all of the systems of the world, how the world works, all have a reason. And therefore, the stars and the constellations, when God brings down his flow to us based on our actions, or based on the challenges and the mazel, the flow he wants to give us, it'll automatically have an imprint that is in the stars, that if you knew how to read it, you would understand this is the flow that God is giving. And that's why Abraham, who was a master at understanding this, he looked in the stars and he said to God, I could see through the stars, I'm not going to have children. So he said. And God said, don't get out of it. It says, get out of your astrology. I run the world. God switched the reality, and all of a sudden he saw it differently. But to see the things in the world, there is an imprint that if you know how to read it, you could see what would happen. Or you could see, not exactly, but you could see an indication of that. Now, there are different planetary issues and different symbolisms that are related. So now for the Jewish people, we are connected to the moon. The nations of the world are aligned, connected with the sun, which is why the Jewish people count according to the lunar cycle, which is, but lunar is not like the Muslims who count only lunar. We count to the lunar cycle, but it's in tandem with the solar calendar, and that's why we have. I'm sorry, hon? Yeah. So that's why there is the alignment of the lunar and the solar. That's why, because they both are working together. But the Jews' mission is to reflect God's light. And therefore, the signs that are affected with the moon can be symbolism for us. In the nations of the world, they are represented often by the sun. And therefore, certain things that happen to the sun are signs for things inside the world, for the nations of the world. And the Talmud says that, don't get caught in this stuff, because God runs the world. But yes, there is some type of significance to lunar eclipses, solar eclipses, planets. But as I say, the people that are spending their time trying to read this are generally charlatans, and if they're good, then they're divinators, and they're getting into a world that's very not true. So I wouldn't worry about it. I would try to do what's right.
Mm.
But it's an amazing thing to see that there is
Yeah.
something that and if it wakes you up to go and to say I want to do better, then that's good. But to go and to live our lives by the signs, that's not what we're supposed to do, because
Got it.
it has no power of its own. It's just an imprint of what the flow that God is giving, which is then affected by the actions that we do. Okay, good.
Yeah,
Thanks, Dan.
there's it. Yeah, it says there's 8. Yeah, all 8 planets are aligning, and it happens every. It looks like 448 years. It seems to happen. So I don't know 400. Yeah, the next one will not happen until May 2492. So yeah, that's or 470 years almost. Yeah, separated. 468. 468 years.
448 years. How many years?
Well,
448?
this is happening on January 25th. It says Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are all lining up in a neat row. And I appreciate you sharing what you shared, so nobody's alarmed. But it's not going to happen again until the year 2492. So that's like 467 years.
Huh. Interesting. I have to try to find that. I think it's something. I don't know what exactly it is, but and the moon in relation to this. There's no lunar eclipse. The moon is not going to be in the line here at all.
No, I don't know how it relates in the moon. Well, the moon still keeps circling around the planet, so I'm sure it's got a cross path there at some time. But yeah, it just if I get hit with a bunch of questions, it's all going to happen in the next 2 weeks. So I don't
know. Maybe people are gonna align together. Maybe, like I say, the Jews are the moon. Maybe the nations of the world will align together and say, for a good thing, let's get rid of nonsense, and let's get back to truth for the whole world. And maybe that's maybe we have an opportunity. I don't know.
Well, thank you for your insights, Rabbi. Anybody else in the group got a question or something they want to ask the Rabbi?
Rabbi, based on the beginning part of your conversation, and we had said slightly with a tone of jest, that Justin Trudeau is resigning as MP. No, as a prime minister. There is it seems that there's a kind of alignment taking place also within the world of people wanting liberty. They don't want to be oppressed anymore by oligarchs and powerful people who control the majority through their minority abilities to control the finances and money, etc. And I really do pray that that's the beginning glimpse, the heels of Mashiach for us.
Yeah, I know. I think it's significant. I think it's very significant, because the reality was that, again, we have to be careful here, because we're not saying that this party or that party are the conveyors of truth. But there is something called something that is closer and more in lines with what is true. And there's no question that, the philosophies we've seen over the past 4 years have been probably some of the craziest things in all of humankind. It really is. I mean, and I always come back to this one, which is like the fact of the male-female component. What is a man? What's a woman? It really is, in my opinion, was one of the craziest realities, because a person has to know who they are, and gender dysphoria is a sad situation. That somebody who has this problem, really needs help, and for the society to go and to promote, as I told you before. That's why I said to you in the beginning. I said this many times already. I said this back when Obama was president. Like, what at that time, it was like I think there was 1,700 transgender people in the world or something like that. And why was this a topic then? And the reason why it was a topic was because it wasn't the issue of this particular point. It was the issue that we're in a war with God. They're in a war with God. That there are no boundaries that we are bound by that God could put on us. We live in Disneyland. If we imagine it, then it must be. And that really is it's mind-boggling, because if you look at the classic, let's say, mental diseases of the ancient generations, right? You look at, for example, the generation of the Tower of Babel. Well, what was their sin? So the sages say, well, in a certain sense, they compare it to murder. And that's very strange, because they were saved because they were united. They actually were in one mission. So why is it called murder? So the sages say because their idea was to separate the spiritual from the physical. The idea of the Tower of Babel was to build a giant tower, put an idol on top of it with a sword in the hand of the idol. Now, of course, people would know that the idol can't fight God, but the symbolism meant that people looking at that and seeing a successful technology, which they had, would mean to people that we're getting everything we need without the source of it, without God. That was so the idea was, listen, we're not saying there's no God. We're saying we don't want any connection with that. That was the flaw of their view, which was a very sick view. But remember, if you were living there and you put it on CNN, that's what they'd be saying to you. They weren't throwing transgender then. If there was a CNN back in Tower of Babel, that's what they were saying. They were saying, and that's why they wanted to get rid of Abraham, because Abraham was the antithesis of that. So their whole motto was, we could do it ourselves. You know, we're going to go to the moon, we're going to control reality, and as long as God doesn't get in our way, we're good. That was their thing. The generation of the flood, their thing was illicit relations. And so they were the ultimate in hedonism, which was our pleasure, and there's no boundary to our pleasure. And that's why they were having licentious relations with everything in every way, because that was the meaning of life. And what was the latest aberration in terms of the this last generation? It was that we are so powerful with our technology and our hormone blockers and whatever else it is, that we don't acknowledge there is a reality. That's what it was. There is no reality. Reality is whatever you determine it to be. It's amazing. So that was really a sickness. Now the fact is, and it's sad, but like people were afraid to talk. People were afraid to talk. Then all of a sudden, once they saw they were the majority, people all of a sudden, yeah, guy's wearing a Trump hat. He wasn't going to wear it before, but now he will, So now people are okay to speak. But you got to remember something, and I do, like the idea. It was a resounding victory. What was it? It was millions of people. Yeah, but what was it? 52%. That still means 48% of the country doesn't think this way. And so there is this pendulum that you have a chance, to enlighten people. But what I've seen, I lived in New York, and I remember I left New York when during the Ed Koch was the mayor. I don't know. I was very young, and New York was a dump. You really couldn't. If you went to Central Park at night, you were finished. And then I came back years later, after when Giuliani was to visit, after Giuliani was the mayor, and I couldn't believe it. 42nd Street, which was like the licentious capital of the world, it's disgusting, was Disney World. What the heck? And it was like a different place. But then once they got comfortable, they went back to the old policies. So once, I don't know how long the pendulum will last. And that's the real deeper part we need to understand here. People that are listening who are Noahides, the people who are Jewish, the people who want to go and want to find truth. You can't go and sell truth to any party. The only truth that there is God, and as he's manifested in his Torah to us. And therefore, yeah, it's good. I'm glad they're aligning. But the media is very good at selling a new product. So they'll twist it this way, twist it that way. But I do agree with you, Rod. I think that this is an opportunity. And I think that as the sages tell us, that these systems really are part of a process to bring the world to completion. And I think that the effect it will have in Israel now, hopefully, will be very positive effect, because from Jerusalem comes the Torah. And what happens is, unfortunately, Israel, although we have a Jewish state, and we have some religious people that have some say in it, but on the whole, it is not controlled by it's controlled by the mixed multitudes, the Erev Rav, and therefore the policies of Israel, are not the Nesi Torah policies. Again, as I said many times, are they according to the secular definition, are they more moral than anyone else? Are they fighting a war by handcuffing themselves and like protecting every single person? Yeah, they are. But they shouldn't even be doing that. They really shouldn't be doing that. They're really fighting terrorism. And they're really fighting a bitter enemy that's really a Moloch that will do suicide bombing, which is the sign that the person is a Nazi mentality that will kill Jews at all costs, even their own lives. So the what's happening is that as the effects of the world start to move into play, God willing, it's going to affect and help us get rid of the Erev Rav, the mixed multitudes, from the leadership in Israel. And that's really happening. There really is a very strong situation now in Israel where the people are, as I said many times, it's an amazing thing. People, let's say if I speak to a Jewish audience, I point this out to them. And it's a fascinating thing, because in America, most Jews are not observant. I don't know the numbers, but the Orthodox Jews are a small percentage. The Reform and Conservative are the majority. But whenever I speak to a Jewish audience, I say to them, you have to understand something. If you go back 4 generations, your parents were all observant Jews for thousands of years. This is a blip in history, and it's not unintentional. It's a blip in history starting in the mid-1800s, where Jews started to create these movements. There was other movements before. There was the Sadducees and there were Karaites. If you look at through a Jewish history, there was always like this small group that broke away and started making their own things. But they were all wiped out. The Karaites, there were a handful of Karaites. There are no Sadducees left in the world. And so now we have another blip, but that was a very powerful one, which is from the 1840s, 1850s. You started to have this reform movement, conservative movement in the 1900s, 150 years. And it's taken, with the Holocaust and various other situations, has affected the Jewish world very strongly. And what's happening is that the Jews now are coming back. And that's the way God set it up, that the Jews will come back. And as they return to Hashem, and this is not me saying it, it's a verse in the Torah. It's many verses in the Torah. But it says in the Torah, it says that when I send you off to far and distant lands, and from there you will return to Hashem with all your heart, and he'll bring you back. That's in Deuteronomy and numerous places there, and so it's happening. It's happening like so clearly. I forgot who it was. It was, I don't know, Dostoevsky. I forgot who it was. There was a Russian. I forgot who it was. An anti-Semite, but he was an intellectual, and the Tsar asked him to prove God to him, and he said Jewish history. Now it's true, because think about it. How many nations have been scattered through the four corners of the earth, gone through persecutions like we have, and then been brought back to their land? You know what the answer is? Zero. Zero. Now, that would be fantastic enough, but the fact that Torah tells you this will happen, how could you read the Torah? I mean, to me, it's mind-boggling. How someone could read the Torah, read Devarim, Deuteronomy, and not understand this is happening right before my eyes. It's mind-boggling because it's so obvious. It's so obvious. It's never happened before. And then it says in the Torah, it says, Hashem, it says, you will stay a small nation instead of a large nation. Do you know that the Jewish population around the Ming Dynasty was almost the same in the Second Temple times as the Chinese? And there's still 14 million Jews, and there's 1 billion Chinese. So, what? That's not logical. Jews also have many children, but God says it in the Torah. Then he says, and what's going to happen is they're going to persecute you. I mean, who's been persecuted like the Jews? Then it says you'll be sent to the four corners of the earth. Who's been scattered more than the Jews? You read the things there and you say, oh my gosh. By the way, as an aside, if the Torah wasn't true, who in the world would accept the book? Moshe's giving them the Torah and saying, here, this is what's going to happen if you don't keep Torah exactly. And it all happened. And then it says, Ach, Kol Zos, even all this, when you're the land of your enemies, I will bring you back. Okay. So, it's amazing. It's fascinating. Which is, by the way, why the church could not acknowledge Israel in 1948. Because it was one of the prophecies that they thought they had was that the Jews will never come back to the land of Israel. And the Pope kept the papal Jews. He kept Jews in Italy that he protected, that they would be able to admit they were wrong. They'll never go back to the land of Israel. Uh-oh. Here they go. Okay, so that, people change, the religions have many variations. So then they go, okay, now a new version, the Jews will come back to Israel. It's a precursor to this, to that. Okay, but these are all ideas that people, create when the reality is shown. So the reality is shown. It's good news, Rod. I agree with you. We're God willing, moving in the right direction, and I think that we are, as you know, in this channel, we are very, very hopeful that everyone will come along. That is the Jewish prayer. We pray that every day. We pray that Yatu Shchem Echad, the whole world will acknowledge God. Not looking for any type of situation of, we're going to be this. No, we want everyone to acknowledge God. So the more the merrier, as they say. Okay, good. Any other questions? What do we got?
I've got one for you, Rabbi.
Yeah, sure.
One of my friends who just recently converted, he said he was reading in the Gemara, and he said he read a portion where it talked about how one of the ways for non-Jews to either participate in Shabbat or be connected to it tangentially is to wish a Jewish person Good Shabbos or Shabbat Shalom. Do you know where that is in the Gemara? Have you read that? He has. I asked him, but he hasn't gotten back to me yet. I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, I don't. You sure it's a Gemara and not something brought in halacha and Jewish law?
I thought he said Gemara, but I might have missed.
Yeah, I'm not seeing such a thing in the Gemara. What there is that in Jewish law, there is a commandment to remember the Sabbath. So we make Kiddush on Shabbos. So there's a law though that I try to do, especially if I'm in a not religious neighborhood, meaning Jews that are not observant, and I see a non-observant Jew, I'll try to quickly wish them a good Shabbos. So then they say good Shabbos to me, they're at least acknowledging the Shabbos. And even though they're not making the Kiddush on the wine, which is the ideal, they are still remembering and having a significance to it. So it would make sense that if a non-Jew says to a Jew, good Shabbos, he's not doing the problem of the keeping of the Shabbos, because the keeping of the Shabbos was given specifically for the Jews. And I try to explain that to you once. The reason for that is a very important idea, because the reason why non-Jews cannot keep the Shabbos, one of the explanations, is because this world was created to work and to create. Our job is to do actions to make the world better. So when the verse says, 6 days you should work, means that you need to be proactive. I hate to burst people's bubble. However, the job in life is not to have a good old time. I want you to have a good time, because if you're doing what's right, you'll be happy. That's the craziest part about it. But what they've sold, the goods they've sold to us is like, the main thing is to be comfortable. No, being comfortable is not the main thing. It's not even good. It's good to be able to be comfortable enough to be able to do what you're doing. But if you're comfortably numb and you're just sitting there and you're not creating, that's not why you were put in this world. So there is an obligation to actively make the world a better place for the time that we're here. The Jews, God said, okay, but what I'm going to give you to do is to one day hook into the internal mechanism of the world, which is not the actions that you're doing, but rather the spiritual root of it, which is already perfected. Taste that perfection, and that is going to be the battery pack that is going to give energy to the entire week. So, but it's a very unique idea that God said, okay, you connect to the spiritual root of the world, and by experiencing that and guarding that, then what that's going to do is going to bless the entire next week. And that's why the Shabbat really has a dual reality. Like if you look at the creation, the sixth is the Shabbat, the first day and the last day in creation. The answer is both. Because the world's created in 6 days, the Shabbat is the last day. But then Adam was supposed to be created on Shabbat. God moved it up because there was no creation on Shabbat. He's created to go into Shabbat, so Shabbat is his beginning. So the Shabbat, what it is, it's the culmination of the work of the week. And then it's the battery pack, the energy that propels us to the next week. So for a Jew, God said, you have to go and stop work, connect into the internal mechanism of the Shabbat, and that's going to bless the world. A non-Jew is commanded to work and to continue creating. And therefore, on the Shabbat, to go and to say, I'm going to desist from all creative action is not the right thing. But what David's saying is a good point. But the aspect of recognizing that God created the world in 7 days, whatever that means. I mean, whatever that means, 24 hours, whatever, however that we discussed that concept of time, but that is an acknowledgement of reality. And so therefore that would make a lot of sense. I could hear that idea. I don't think it's a Talmudic statement, but I think it's probably brought in law, which I haven't seen that, but I know it's a law by by Jews to say to one another to acknowledge the Shabbat, and therefore there should be no reason why a non-Jew shouldn't be able to participate in that, because it's the acknowledgement of that. I'll add something to that. I don't know of any other. I don't think there's any society. Maybe there's one, but I don't think there's any society who doesn't have a 7-day week. We've never heard such a thing. Now, if you think about it, a 7-day week makes absolutely no sense. It doesn't divide equally. Why is it a 7-day week? Make a 10-day week and have 3 weeks of the month. Well, why is there a 7-day week? So the Kuzari, I don't know if you know the Kuzari. The Kuzari was a book that was written, a very fascinating story. It was a true story, but it was the king of this land, Kuzar, and he kept having a recurring dream. And the recurring dream kept telling him that he said, he had heard a voice saying, your intentions are good, but your actions aren't. So the book is then him trying to find out how he should act. And he calls in the Muslims, the Christian, the philosophers. He goes to everyone. And last, he goes to the Jews. This is especially when the Jews were extremely downtrodden in the time where they were being, not the glory of, at the time of King Solomon or the times where the Jews were the superpower of the world, but in more recent exile that we're in right now. So he finally goes to the Jews, and the rest of the book is a conversation between him and the rabbi, who explained to him. And then this is true. This was historically true. There was a country that the king converted, and the entire country converted, called Kuzar. And that was one of the points he brings up. Like, why is there a 7-day week? Why does everyone have that? And the answer is because if you go back in history, people always knew that the world had a 7-day cycle. Otherwise, it makes no sense. You could do anything. You could do 5 days, 5 times 6. There's no reason for it. It doesn't make sense. But everyone has a 7-day week because back in the time immemorial, they knew that this was 7 days, and people have been doing it. So yes, David, the answer to your question is I haven't seen that, but it makes sense. I haven't seen any problem with saying Good Shabbos because it's not desisting from activity. That's the problem for a non-Jew is and again, what's called work is a little different than we say today. It doesn't mean you have to go to your 9-to-5 job. It means you have to be proactive. So if you want to write a song, you take a pen and you write that song. If you're an artist and you're not Jewish, take your pens and take your stuff and make beautiful art. It doesn't mean work in the sense that going to a 9-to-5 job you might not like, but it means being creative and proactive in the world, and that the non-Jews should do because that's their job. Great. Okay. Good. What else we have?
I have a question, Rebbe.
Sure.
Also, Tamar has a question. She just asked me, can Hashem breathe? She wants to know, can Hashem breathe? And you also want to know, if he doesn't have eyes, how can he see?
Oh, wow. Wow. But Tamar. Very good question.
She's been listening to people ask questions, and that was her question.
It's a very, very good question. I got to tell you, Tamar, it's very, very good. So I'll tell you something, Tamar. See, the funny thing is that we could see, right? So God, he sees, and he gave us eyes so we could do a little bit like he does. We could see too. He doesn't need to see through eyes. We need to see through eyes. Right?
Right?
Hashem can see, but he doesn't need eyes. We need eyes. He doesn't need eyes.
You say thank you to Rabbi Ingber? that was very nice for
The
him to
truth,
say
the
that.
truth is, the answer I gave is that's a very, very deep answer. I can't really get into. It's actually a very deep answer because it's a very good question for Charles. Great, but the truth is that that when we talk about seeing, we talk about all these things. It's really a reflection to what the deeper reality, that whatever it means, that whatever the experience of perceiving whatever it is, so we do it in our limited way. God gives us an ability to emulate him in certain ways. So that's a very good question. Okay, good. Yeah, what you say, the other?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. It's actually about lashon hara, about speaking about other people negatively, I guess. So I'm just wondering if you wouldn't mind explaining for a second what is the what is the spiritual implication for doing that, and like because there's like times where it's like like you're going through something's happening and you want to like talk about it. I don't know if it's more of a thing with women than with men, because I feel like men kind of like have a maybe like I don't know. I feel like they don't talk as much.
Yeah, we watch football instead.
Yeah, but so I would like for you to just mention something about that. I'm just curious about like what exactly. Like I know it's not good to do, but I feel like sometimes like like you want to get something off your chest and you want to say something, and then but then like there's got to be some sort of spiritual effect that has, and then like also like is it actually worse for the person who says it? 1 second, Tamar. Is it worse for the person that says it, or is it worse for the person that's being spoken about?
Okay, it's a very good question. I don't actually know, to be honest with you. I don't know if this is an obligation for non-Jews, for Noahides, but I gotta tell you, there's no reason not to do it. Because it is really a life-changing thing. And it's so funny because it really doesn't exist it's just a foreign idea to the world, that's speaking badly about someone. Now, I'm going to give a caveat here, because we are, most of our audience here are Noahides. I'm going to give a certain caveat, which I've given in other situations about, and then I'll explain the law here, and with that caveat, it'll be applicable to Noahides to understand how to apply this. There is a phenomenon that, and this is, I think, one of the, although I've always told you many times that we don't believe, we don't look at the world that, oh, this group is better than that group. A Jew has his obligation, and he has to do his obligation. Non-Jew has to do their obligation, and we don't go and it's a very beautiful system that God said. Noahides have their laws, Jews have their laws. Someone wants to convert, they can convert, but the Jewish obligation is a full-time job, and not everyone is up to 24/7, and therefore there's no obligation for someone to convert. But there's one part that is sounds a little bit it doesn't sound very egalitarian. It doesn't sound very but it's true, and I really want to share it because it's important to know this. There are certain laws that Jews have that Noahides don't have, because there is a difference in the system. There are some people in the world that are evil. There are some people in the world that are evil, literally evil. Hitler is evil. Okay, there are evil people in the world. Okay, now we don't maintain that within the Jewish system, anyone who is a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, God said is not evil. Now, again, so someone's a Noahide, they can be very good, but there are going to be some people in the world who are going to be evil. And therefore, we don't maintain that by the Jewish system. We maintain they could be acting badly. They could be, acting in a way that they shouldn't be. But if you peel away the system, then you're going to find, good. That is true for many of your friends and associates. But you, as a Noahide, need to be aware when someone is really, really evil. Okay? You need to be aware of that. If someone's a terrorist, you need to know that person's evil. I don't hate to say it, but we don't have such a thing. I mean, there aren't Jews blowing themselves up. No matter what the media tells you, the Jews there's no Jew that wants to fight with and destroy the Arabs. They don't. They want to be left alone. It's just not true. They switch it that way because they're bombing us. We're bombing them back. But there's not now. Why am I telling this distinction? Because therefore there is a difference with how you relate to this. In terms of lashon hara, speaking evil about someone. So the law is a Jew should not speak evil about anyone, not a Jew and not a non-Jew. The Chavetz Chaim says not speak about anyone bad, but an evil person, yes. If someone's evil, so you need to distinguish now a little bit, because if you're going to have like people sometimes in the news who are really evil, it's not the time to be coddling and nice. It's not a time for the benefit of the doubt. The benefit of the doubt goes for certain situations. It doesn't go for people that are straight out evil. Okay? Now, so you have to, I'm telling you this because for all Jews, be careful about any Jew, and if it's a non-Jew, you should also not speak lashon hara, as Chavetz Chaim says. But if it's a person that you know is an evil person in the world, that's different, and therefore you have to know this distinction. So, but if you're talking about people that you see good in, that are not evil, you see good in them. So, what happens when you speak lashon hara? Well, what happens is you create a power of destruction. The lashon hara, evil speech, is lined up with the serpent. And the serpent started lashon hara. He said, eat this tree, could be like God. He started with that. And he created this negative reality in the world. Now, speech is a unique reality. There are three parts of a person, okay? There is the thought, there is the speech, and there is the action. Those are the three clothings that we talk about. My thoughts are my internal spiritual dimension. My action is when I bring it into the world of action. The bridge between that is speech. And that's why the word for speech is davar, which means to speak, ledaber, which is the same as an object, because you create a reality with your speech. So your speech is not only is it like doing something bad, like doing a bad action, in a certain way it's worse, because it's a higher part of your being. It's the link between your spiritual and your physical world. So you're damaging someone with a higher part. What made mankind great was their power to speak, to take the spiritual dimension and to express it fully. So when you harm someone physically, you're doing one thing. And when you harm them through speech, in a certain way, you are doing even more damage, because you're doing it with a more powerful tool. And that's why it says in Proverbs, the life and death is in the hand of the tongue. You could destroy a guy's person's parnas, their livelihood. You could destroy their life. You could do all these things. And people in the world say, oh, it's not real. I just said it. No. When you say something, you're creating a reality that people are accepting. So now you damage yourself, because you are now imitating the serpent. You're creating negativity in the world with your higher self. So you don't want to speak negative about someone, because you're damaging them, And you're damaging them with a tool that is used as the greatness of humankind. So Lashon Hara, therefore, is a very, very terrible, terrible thing. And now, the thing about Lashon Hara, which is a fascinating thing, is that it's not a question whether it's even true or not. It could be true. See, in the secular world, if you go the non-Jewish world, the laws of the media, well, if it's true, you can't sue me for slander. That's true. That's true. But it doesn't mean that it's correct that if you go and you speak against someone, even if it's true, it doesn't mean that you're allowed to say it. So, but why not? It's true. And the answer is because why are you saying it? If it's an evil person, you need to tell people, and you could tell people. And therefore, there are various factors that allow us to speak badly. What are the factors that allow us to speak badly? Well, one is it will cause benefit to other people. So I know this guy is a thief. You can own the business deal with him. I got to tell you, he's a thief. So if I'm going to help someone allowed to say negative things, I'm going to help them. Two, if the person is going to, if I know it personally, I have seen it and I know it, I'm allowed to say it. Okay? I know it. Three, if I say what I know, I cannot exaggerate or embellish it. Four, I have to tell a person, check it out yourself, because this is what I understand, but you got to check it out yourself. And five, and this is the hardest one, I can't have enmity to the person. I can't go and make this make this something that has to do with my own hatred. I can't do that. And so therefore, those are, I think there's maybe one or two more, but those are the basic structures that allow you to say negative things because it's for a good purpose. But if you're not doing it for a good purpose, then why are you doing it? Why are you associating? Why are you getting this? So you damage the person. Now, if you hear it, you shouldn't accept it. You hear someone says to you something you couldn't run out of the room, don't accept it. Unless, again, we're dealing with people in the media today, people who are bad, people who are maybe a Rishayim, then you can. But again, for your friends and your family, don't, unless you need. Now, therefore, if you have one of those reasons you have to say it, Naomi, because it's for a benefit, but you could say it. If you're saying it to a person, you need to share it with, as a counselor, as a rabbi, and you can say it to them, but they have to be skilled enough not to accept it. I had a case like that where a person was trying to help people here, and once they heard it, they couldn't get it out of their heads. So when people tell me something, I say, you know what, I'm going to hear you, but you got to know I can't accept it. So I don't accept it. So if you need to speak it out with someone, speak it out with someone that is trained not to go and to embody it and then try to follow the rules of how to say it. I have to check out, guys. I'm sorry. I have another appointment. I got to run, but it's great seeing you all, and I will see you next week.
Don't forget that Monday night, Rabbi Zvi Avner will have his class. And Dan, it's over to you now. Hi, Tamar.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, Rabbi. So we're aiming for next week as well. That's great news. Look forward to it. I'm not on next week with Rabbi Goldberg, so I think you guys will be my only broadcast next Sunday, which is good because in the following week I got 12 hours straight, and the week after that I get to go to Montreal and meet my rabbi, and yeah, exciting stuff happening. 2025 is here, and Canada's going to get a new prime minister. Woohoo!
Better days ahead.
I'm excited. All right. So good to see you, Rod.
Take care.
I wish you well down there. And
good to see all you guys.
For my movie.
Thank you.
Right.
Shalom, shalom.
Log out for now. Till next week, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful week.